Today we're going to switch it up a little bit. I'm sitting down. I'm not Alex. Normally, you guys know I'm an exhorter, and I've been often referred to as the hammer when I teach. And so I just felt this morning when Alex said to encourage the marriages that I would take a different approach and try to maybe to challenge us in a little different manner this morning. And so that's what I'm going to do. But I wanted to show that clip because, again, we're going to talk about marriage. And so here's what I want you to know. I'm going to set this down here so it doesn't roll off on me. There's some of you in the room that aren't married yet. That's okay. This message is for you because it is going to give you some ideas about what you might want to look for, in your future mate, and what you would want to look like. That's true too. For those of you that are married, it is going to be something that you're going to want to lean into. And for those of you that maybe are never plan to marry, or maybe you're on the other side of that and you're no longer married, this is for you because when you have an opportunity to engage with others, you can take wisdom and things that you've learned and help to coach and to support and encourage those that are in the midst of marriage. So this really is for everybody. And so here's the basic premise this morning. Just like those 4 or 5 vignettes and maybe many of your stories, falling in love is easy. Staying in love is much harder. Right? Joe's shaking his head. Okay. That's because of you, Joe. Okay. Okay. Just so we're clear on that, right? Why do I say it's easy? Because basically, you need a pulse in your hormones, and basically things begin, right, to take care of themselves. And so most of you started your journey with some kind of a interest in the one that you're with now, probably a crush. You maybe found each other attractive. Maybe you shared a few common interests. But honestly, you really had no idea who you were about to spend the rest of your life with, right? I'm curious, how many of you have been married 0 to 5 years? Let me see, hands up. Okay. All right, 0 to 5. All right, how about 6 to 10? Okay. 11 to 20. Okay. Over 20. There we are. Over 30. Over 30, that's where I am. Okay. Anybody over 40? Okay. Anybody over 50? All right. So we have a good balance in the room this morning. Falling in love for me was pretty simple because I was in love with me, and I thought Dana should be too. It was really that simple. No, very, very, very seriously. I was in love with me and thought, well, she'd be happy to have me. But we didn't enter marriage knowing everything there was to know about one another. You usually know, right, some of the good things, or a lot of the good things. That's what drew you together, right? But you had no idea all the surprises that were likely headed, to give you an example, maybe from our marriage, like that he likes to go to bed early and he likes to rise early, but she prefers to stay up late and sleep in. Didn't know that till we got married. I can fall asleep without the TV. She loves the TV on to go to sleep. This is a big one in the house. She prefers that the toilet paper unroll from the top. I prefer from the bottom. A big deal in marriage, right? So she loves all types of salad dressing. I hate salad, period. Okay? She likes her pizza with pesto sauce and vegetables. Not me. Red meat and red sauce. Bring it on. That's me. She has a wide variety of interests and is really adventurous. I'm pretty simple, few things, rinse and repeat. That's me. But this is one that really can press on it, but I don't understand it still to this day. To me, 5 minutes means 5 minutes. To her, 5 more minutes is an indefinite period of time, or at least it can be, all right? So my guess is this. Most of you would agree, falling in love is easy, staying in love is something entirely different. And actually, if you look at all the statistics today, when we think about marriage and why is it so hard, why does it take so much energy, why do you feel like your relationship is a struggle at times, there's opposition. I'm not going to share anything this morning, honestly, that's new truth to any of you, but I want you to understand that there is something at work that is seeking to oppose each and every one of our marriages, all right? And if we really want to live the abundant life that Jesus died to provide and be the partner that God wants us to be, we're going to need to realize that we have an enemy, okay? And his name is Satan, and he wants to come and rob, to kill, and destroy. And what is he trying to destroy? He's just trying to destroy the marriage, because do you know why? That is the picture of what God established way back in Genesis. Right, so if you're taking notes this morning, all my scriptures are in the app. But if you're taking notes this morning, why is he attacking the marriages? Because God's design for marriage is to be a picture of Christ and his relationship with the church. That is exactly why Satan has his rifle pointed directly at each and every one of your marriages. We read in Ephesians 5 in verse 31 and 32, it says this: "For this reason, a man will leave his father and his mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh." It says this is a profound mystery, but I'm talking about Christ and the church. So think about this. When God thought way back in the beginning of time how he could best show the love relationship of Jesus to the church, he decided to design marriage to demonstrate that. Just let that sink in for a second. God is giving us the picture, actually, he's really giving us living pictures, which is my marriage and all of your marriages, to show a representation of God's love to the world through Jesus. So our marriages actually speak of something far deeper than just a relationship between a husband and a wife, okay? In Genesis chapter 2, it says this: "God declares that it is not good for Adam, who was the first man, as we know, to live alone." Here's what it says in Genesis 2, 21 through 25. "But for Adam, no suitable helper was found. So the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep, and while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and then closed up the place with flesh. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. And the man said, 'This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man.' That is why a man leaves his father and his mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh." So I'm thankful for this. I'm so thankful for this. All the animals are there, but none of them were a suitable partner for Adam. Men, can we say amen to that? All right, can we just say amen? So God, in a special act, right, of creation, he makes a woman. Now listen to this. In just a few verses later, the woman is called his wife. Eden was the scene of the first marriage. It was ordained and officiated by God himself. And the author of Genesis then records this as the standard by which all future marriages are set to point their attention to and be supportive of and follow and look exactly like. So if you're taking notes, here's the second thing I want you to write down. God's design for marriage is to be between a man and a woman. I will say that again. God's design for marriage is to be between a man and a woman. That Hebrew word right there for wife is gender specific. It cannot mean anything other than woman. And there's no other passage in Scripture that mentions a marriage, or when marriage is referenced, involving anything other than a man and a woman. It's impossible for a family to form or human reproduction to form asexually, right? It's impossible. Right? So since God ordained sex to be confined inside of marriage, God's design is for the family unit to be formed when a man and a woman come together in a sexual relationship and have children, to be fruitful and then to multiply. It's between a man and a woman. His design for marriage also it was intended to last for a lifetime. Genesis 2:24 says, "The two become one flesh." Eve was taken from Adam's side. She was literally one flesh with Adam. And every marriage thereafter is intended to reflect that unity, right, that we see there, because Adam and Eve, their bond came together in the flesh, and they were bound together as one. There's no escape clause written, right? We don't see an escape clause, right? God designed marriage for life. when a man and a woman made that commitment to marry. So I'll just summarize those 3 points, and then we're going to dive deep, okay? God's design for marriage is to be a picture of Christ and his relationship to the church. His design is for marriage to be between a man and a woman, and it's intended to last a lifetime. That's exactly why Satan, the enemy that we have that wants to rob, kill, and destroy, is doing everything today to seek to redefine what marriage is. Do you see what's happening? The culture today is being influenced by Satan to redefine what marriage is. Because if Satan can get everybody to believe that it's not between a man and a woman, or that it was not intended to last forever, right, he begins to chink away, right, and with the original plan that God had established way back in Genesis. And he's going to do whatever he can to cause that division, that deception, right, and cause it to be redefined. He knows Satan cannot harm God. So what is he going to do? He's going to go after the one thing that God established to show that picture, and that's the marriages. So we want to talk this morning about being the partner that God wants us to be. I got a news flash for everybody this morning. The greatest thing that you're ever going to discover in your marriage, you ready? It's not about you. Okay? It's not about you. It's not about your happiness. It's all about Christ and his love for you and for the church. So imagine on that wedding day, when you got married, we know, okay, God ordained marriage. He was the pastor at your wedding. Imagine this. And he issues this challenge. Okay, he said, Mike, he said, I have got an ultimate toast for you, okay? Your job is to give the world the right picture of my relationship to the church by the way your relationship to Dana is set up. That's the challenge that he gave each and every one of us that have stepped in to marriage, because it's the picture. And from the beginning, Satan's working hard to tear it apart. So you're thinking this morning, though, or you could be thinking, Mike, you don't, but things in our marriage aren't great. But you don't understand. My spouse has changed since we first met. Or maybe you'd say our interests are just different now. Things that we used to be interested in together, we're no longer interested in. You might say, Mike, you don't know how they've hurt me. I can only forgive so much. There's just no trust left to give. Or you might be thinking, Mike, you don't understand. My spouse is just not trying to make it work, so why do I have to keep trying as well? Some of you thought I could just change them, right? All of these are lies from an enemy who wants to rob, kill, and destroy, and he's focusing on getting you to be divided. Now, we've been married for 32 years. We dated for 3, so we've been together way more than half of our lives, but it hasn't happened by accident. I can tell you it's taken a lot of work. It still takes a lot of work. Honestly, it's different seasons. It's no less work today than it was really in year 1, year 5, or year 10. It's just really not. It's just different things that are in front of us. But we have a clear-cut plan for our marriage. We know we just said, we read that God's design was that it to be a picture, but do you actually have a plan as a couple? Do you actually have a plan? Have you talked about how you're going to fulfill that purpose? You've heard me say it before, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time, right? So if you don't have a plan, you're doomed to fall into what I would say temptation, frustration, and probably some problems along the way, because you haven't actually sat down to talk about what is our plan for staying together. I said it earlier, I think our plan is to give others the right opinion of who God is when they look at our marriage. But you know what? We don't have that on our bumper sticker on the car. It's not on our Facebook profile. We don't have any T-shirts that talk about what our purpose is. Because remember, you've heard me say this: more is caught than is taught, right? And we want it to be observed by others. But the most important people to us who we wanted to observe it was our kids. We wanted our kids to be able to see what a couple seeking to strive to give others that right opinion of God and to honor that first marriage actually look like. And we've had a ton of failure, and our kids will tell you that. We didn't live this out perfectly at all, but it was really important for us to have our kids see what that looked like, with hopes that as they begin to look for their spouse, that they would have an accurate picture of what a marriage should look like going forward. So we had set this verse aside. Dave and I have taught many marriage conferences and marriage retreats over the years. And in one of the sessions we teach, we talk about this very specifically. Here is the verse that actually helps us frame what we're aiming at, okay? And it comes in Philippians 2, verses 1 through 4. It says this: "Is there any encouragement from belonging to Christ, any comfort from his love, any fellowship together in the Spirit? Are your hearts tender and compassionate? Then make me truly happy by agreeing wholeheartedly with each other, loving one another, and working together with one mind and purpose. Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too." The key purpose is found in that second half of verse 1, fellowship in the Spirit. That word fellowship there comes from the Greek word koinonia, which means oneness. Again, we're after oneness in our marriage, and maintaining oneness is critical. It requires discussion, it requires planning, and it absolutely requires humility, okay? Again, seeking others' needs above your own, because we're threatened by so many things. And there's actually, if you just look at our culture today, there's little in our culture, very little in our culture today, that actually encourages two people to make the difficult adjustments to stay together and to seek oneness. 50 years ago, the home and the value was highly esteemed. It was very different than what we experience today. And religion was an esteemed part of the culture 50 years ago. Today, the home and the family are devalued, largely because they don't exist like they used to. And the divorce rate is well above 50%, and that's across the board now, inside and outside of the church. I looked up some statistics because because I was looking at teaching another marriage conference we were working on. And so listen to this. This is some recent Gallup survey on moral attitudes. Okay, so moral attitudes. Listen to this. Over 50% said that it's not morally wrong to have a baby before marriage. Over 60% said it's not morally wrong to get a divorce. And over 50% said it's not morally wrong to cohabitate. So you can see where the moral culture is, right? But get this, over 50% did say that it was morally wrong to cheat or be unfaithful if you were married. Interesting. So if you take those statistics, here's the logical conclusion. The best way, I'm not saying this, the statistics would say this. Mike's not saying this, but the best way to be moral is to live with someone, have sex, have a baby, but don't get married. That's what the statistics say, based on what people's presuppositions are. So obviously the culture is negatively influencing everything that how we view marriage. Now this was the stat that really surprised me most. Those ages 18 to 29. How many are 18 to 29 in here? Okay, all right. 67% of those said that divorce is okay. That's 2/3. That means 2/3 of that age demographic is stepping into what is to be a lifelong commitment, really with an idea probably not too dissimilar to your streaming service trial period. We're going to give this a try, and after 30 days or 3 years, if we don't like it, we'll just cancel it and move on. That's the mentality of that age demographic. Now listen, those 30 to 49, 61% said divorce is okay. So it doesn't really get much better. But this is the one that really surprised me. Those in the next age demographic, which is me, 50 to 64, you know what what they said? 70% I would have thought it would have been lower. But so I dive deeper. You want to know what's behind some of this? The plan that the people our age had, you say, well, they planned for something. Their plan was, we're going to basically stay together and cohabitate just long enough to get our kids either through college or married. We're going to tolerate one another, probably living more like roommates than helpmates. And the minute the kids are gone, so are we. That's what's happening in our culture today. So let's talk about this morning some threats that all of our marriages face, threats to the oneness that we're all after, okay? The first one is this: performance-based relationships. The world's pattern is this 50-50 performance relationships. It basically says acceptance of one another is based upon how each other are performing, right? You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back, right? So practical. Could be this: I'll take out the trash, I'll cut the yard, I'll wash the cars if you do the laundry, the grocery shopping, and the meals, okay? Now, there's nothing wrong with sharing equally the load of everything. That's not the point. The problem is what happens when one side doesn't do their part, right? We entered this agreeing that it's a 50-50, but one of us is not upholding our end of the bargain. What happens is you start keeping score, right? And here's what happens in marriages. The giving, the serving, and now the loving is based upon merit. And any affection is only given when one feels it's deserved. And the problem is, anytime your motivation is based on feelings, look out. Because we all know our feelings, right, will fail us, right? So the world's pattern of this 50-50, it's doomed to fail because we're being met with unreal expectations. Because even if Dana and I agree to do things well, neither of us are going to do them perfectly all the time. And so depending upon how often I'm missing or how often she's missing, if that's our approach, the 50-50 performance model, which it's not, but if that were you see the problem with that is you're setting up from the beginning failure, because no person is going to bat 1,000. And that's when this whole idea of merit, right, begins to enter in, right? The other problem is we don't really know if the other person is actually meeting us halfway or not, right? You don't always know. Just because they're checking a box, are they really all in, whatever it is, right? And this idea of 50-50 just doesn't work. What happens is it begins to develop bitterness, frustration, a revengeful attitude. And right now, I'd say in a room this size, there probably are some marriages that probably operate very similar to that. And it's greatly affecting, or has affected, your oneness because of that bitterness and the resentment. If that's you, do me a favor. Talk about it this week. Just say, you know what? I think it's possible. Maybe it's even unintentional. Maybe you didn't sit down at the beginning of, day one after the honeymoon with a to-do list and handed it out. But maybe over time, that's actually what's happening inside of your, right, marriage. Just talk about that. This is an opportunity to raise an opportunity for you to talk to one another about it this week, all right? Here's the second threat. The inability to work through difficulties and trials that come your way, okay? And there really are we see two key failures in responses to trials. And the first is to anticipate that they're actually going to come, right? Like, I did not realize how much Dana liked to shop, okay? She used to love to shop at Famous Bar. Thank goodness they went out of business. Well, actually not really. Macy's took them over. But she didn't realize how much of a homebody I was in the early years. Now, both of us, right, have worked together, because I like to shop too. Okay, so, but I didn't realize that initially, right? Dana cares more about what people think about her than I do what people think about me. Okay? My natural tendency and motivation is to choose production over people. Dana's is to choose people over production. None of those things are necessarily right or wrong, but you can understand when a conflict arises, she's going to lean more towards how do people respond and feel and think about what this thing is if there's a decision we have to make. I'm going to be the other way, which is suck it up, buttercup, they'll get over it, let's move on. So you see, neither of those things necessarily, our motivations are wrong, but when they come together, when there's an opportunity for conflict, not recognizing how each other are motivated, right, is actually the situation here. The second is the failure to respond properly to difficulties and problems. One of the sessions that we teach, depending upon, there's one of two types of people, okay, when conflict is building in a home, okay, or building in a situation. You're either a stuffer or you're an exploder. Okay, and so let me just describe it. Stuffers are those that just, when something happens, it bothers them greatly, but outwardly you don't know it, and they just stuff it. And over time, they just keep stuffing, until one day, it could be as simple as, I don't take out the trash, and then whoosh, right? And it really had nothing to do with that moment's instance of not taking the trash out. It had to do with the previous 22 things that I had done wrong. And finally, that was really the straw that broke the camel's back. So some of you are stuffers, and you just keep stuff in, and you're great at hiding it, and we don't know your spouse may not understand what's even going on, that they've offended you 22 times in a row, okay? And then there's the other side of the coin, which is the exploders, right? The minute something happens, you're ready to take it on. Everybody knows exactly what's going on, right, between your ears, right? And so,
you're saying they married each other, right?
Well, I don't. Yeah. Well, I'm saying I tend to be an exploder, and Dana is more of a stuffer. But we know this about one another now. So I have to do a lot of work, right, on me, not on her, on me, to understand and ask questions to be sure that I'm not letting things build up. And we've 32 years, we've learned how to do this, but it's something that we didn't know early in our marriage, how to deal with well. And difficulties are going to come, okay, for many reasons. I mean, James says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. So they're coming, all right? Know this, you've either just come from a trial, you're in one, or you're headed to one. I mean, let's just be honest. Just recognize it. So it's the ability to prepare and recognize you're not alone. It's how are you going to deal with these, all right? Here's a third threat to oneness, and it's extramarital affairs. All right? Now, extramarital affairs are more than just physical affairs. They represent a lot of areas. So, example, they take on many forms, like an activities affair. It's when a disproportionate amount of time is given by one spouse to an activity, right? Nothing wrong with golfing and hunting and fishing and cars and the things that you guys like, guys, or gaming, okay? But if you spend a disproportionate amount of time, okay, to the detriment of your relationship with your wife, okay, and your family, that's an activity affair, okay? And it is very common, and we think that it's just acceptable. So binge watching, something on Netflix is not necessarily bad unless that's what you do 3 hours a day, every day, and again, are neglecting, the relationship with your wife. There's a materialism affair. Hopefully it's just one of you. Well, hopefully it's neither of you, but likely it's one of you, is after bigger, better, faster, and more often, right? And those things inside of a relationship right, really cause a lot of problem. And if you're both after that, then it's probably a train wreck really ready to happen. But usually it's one or the other that's after, have a tendency to go after the bigger, better, faster, now kind of thing. Then there's the career affair. That's where you throw your very, very best that you have at work. And we should work diligently as to the Lord. I'm not saying you don't give it 100%, but it's out of balance. You give everything you have at the office, and when you get home, you have no time to invest in your relationship with your wife and your family. And oftentimes, where we've seen it most is in situations where the reason for that is because that's where you're seen as successful. That's where you get the attaboy or the attagirl. You know, that's where you're recognized for the work that you do. That's where you feel important, right? That's where you get, honestly, your identity, right? It's very natural, but we've almost accepted these things as if it's okay. And that's why I'm pointing it out this morning. It's really not okay. That's not where your identity should be. That's not where the very best hours of your week should be given. And then, of course, there is the physical affair, which instantly shatters oneness and trust. Where in the other things, it can be a slow buildup over time. But here's what happened. All of it is really because there's a root inside of every one of us that is after this complete fulfillment and perfect happiness. And so we're seeking, whether it's activities or materialism or career or physical, because we believe we deserve something different than what we have. And honestly, society programs us to want those things. I mean, I don't even have to talk about, you guys understand what that. We get an improper perception of what reality is. And then we actually start questioning, right, and believing that our fantasies, that things that we desire, are actually the thing that is accurate, and the reality is what is improper, right? But probably the biggest threat to the oneness, if you're taking notes, it's you. Because it's rooted in pride. That word pride, that the letter in the very middle of that word is I. Pride says, I deserve this. I want this. I'm going to do that. Right? We feel we deserve to have things different than they are. It says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. The opposite of pride is humility. I would issue a challenge, I guess, to us this morning as I'm thinking about it. That verse, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. If each and every marriage in this room this morning sought to do that, each person for the next 30 days, your marriage will look different 30 days from now. Remarkably different. How do I outserve? How do I outlove the one that you're with? I'm going to close this morning. I'm going to have Dana come up here this morning and just talk about a few practical things that we've plugged in over these 32 years. But for those of you that don't know, I'm just going to give you a quick snapshot. I said we've been married 32 years. We met back in junior high school. I'm 2 years older than Dana, even though she looks 15 years younger than me. I was a freshman. She was in 7th grade, and I remember her walking down the aisle, and I remember how she was walking and what she was carrying, how she was carrying it, and this folder. And I shared that with her years later. She's like, that's exactly right. She's got a memory that remembers crazy things about what she wore on certain days and dates and things. And so I remember seeing her as I was a freshman, but we didn't actually start hanging out until my senior year of high school, when I was dating her best friend. And then we ended up going on several dates, proms, homecomings together. I was always with her best friend, and she was always with somebody else each time. So it was, but her and her best friend are still really good friends today. We didn't make it, and then I ended up visiting my sister in college, and her and my sister were close because they had done cheerleading together in high school, and then they were at the same college together. I went to visit my sister. Hadn't seen Dana for probably 3 years. We just reconnected. My girlfriend had dumped me, and I needed a date to my graduation ball, my college deal, and so I ran into her by chance at the mall one day, and I said, "Oh, hey, by the way, would you want to go with me?" And she said yes, and so we've been together ever since, right? How's that? She says, "Do you really want me to share?" I said, "Yeah, I do want you to share because I believe that, we're together because of this, okay? Each man must love," this is Ephesians 5:33. "Each man must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband." It's love and respect. As I love, she respects. If I'm not loving, she's not going to be respecting, right? So it's really the yin and yang, chicken egg. It all goes together. But I want Darren to share at least a couple of items. Specifically, first talk about prayer and how prayer has helped to enable us to still be sitting here today, quite frankly.
True, because we're completely opposite on every level. And it is quite amazing. It is all God. But it did start out pretty rocky. We grew up completely differently. I am more of a perfectionist. I do want things to look a certain way. And when it wasn't looking a certain way, I did get angry, and I was very bitter for a long time at the beginning. And spiritually, we were not on the same level at all when we first started. I guess we had a lot of sin issues, and then spiritually, God just started really working in my life, and I didn't feel like God was working in his life like he should, like I thought it should look. And I was getting angry, and I would bring up things to him, and he's the exploder, and I'm the stuffer. So it would take me a long time, and I would finally mention something, and he would explode, and that didn't work. Nothing was really working, and it felt not so great. And so I don't know if it was a devotion that someone gave me or I went to a seminar, but it was all on prayer, and I thought, this has to be my answer. And so I just started being silent and loving and respecting, even though I didn't always feel it on the inside. And I just started giving it to God. And I just started praying. And the devotion that I was using had a place to write your prayers. And at first I would have like one sentence. And then by the end of the book, I ran out of room praying, and I would just start praying for him specific things. And then he would walk in and say one day after work and be like, "Oh, blah, blah, blah." And I'd be like, "Oh, I wrote that in my journal," like literally word for word, that God would do that. And I saw God start answering when I started being quiet and let God work. It really did change a lot. I mean, it changed my relationship with the Lord, of course. And then it started to change our relationship. So praying was probably the most important thing. And we joke that I finally did share it with them that I was praying certain things, because I would be like amazed over and over again how God would answer prayer. And then
I think you kept that from me for a while. Like you were
yeah,
seeing it happen.
I just saw God moving, but I didn't share.
And then when she finally started to share it with me and went back and said, "These are all the things that I was praying for," and I'd be like, "Wow!" So then the kind of the joke is, if I want to figure out what's going to happen in my life in 30 days or 90 days, I should just read today's prayer journal, and I know what's going to happen, because that's real. I don't do that, but that really is. I mean, this has been years of this kind of So.
And while we're on that, it is Mother's Day. And so sometimes most of the time, that's the number one thing that we need to do too, is be praying. Loving and praying, loving and praying, and loving and praying. And then I guess, that all sounds wonderful. It didn't change overnight, obviously. I was at home with 7 children under the age of 13, and Mike traveled most of the time. He was gone more than he was at home. And I homeschooled. And so there was a big part of me that felt like he was getting all of the accolades and the fun, and I was at home. But then again, I think God just started to soften my heart and realize, would I want to be financially responsible for my household and all of these children? And it made me realize what a burden that is on him. And so even though there were many times I thought I was working harder, I had to realize that he was the one that was providing and working, and the burden of our family was on his shoulders, and that's a huge burden. And so I just started really praising him and thanking him. And even though Dad was gone a lot, when he did come home, I really tried to, with my kids, say, Dad has done this for us. Aren't you thankful that Dad goes to work every day and cares for us and provides for us? When we would go out to dinner, and the kids still do it today, and I don't ever say it, but they thank him. Thank you for McDonald's today, Dad. And it seems like such a silly thing, but I think it just fostered a love and a thanks and a respect that he works hard and he provides for us, even from the smallest things. I think even Jensen, just the other day, we went somewhere, and the first thing was, "Thank you, Dad." And I hope that was fostered out of a love and respect for him working so hard and for caring for us while I did get to stay home. And then, is there anything else you want me to say?
Yeah, I want you to talk about, because I know we have a lot of marriages here with young kids at home, and you just said we had 7 under the age of 13, and what it felt like to try to keep the oneness together with date nights.
We did always love getting to be together and spending time together, but as you can imagine, no one's going to want to babysit for that many kids, and so but we did try to make it a priority for date nights, and most of those were at-home date nights because we didn't have the money to pay for a babysitter, and our parents would help once in a while for more of like the emergency sort of things, like we had a wedding to go to or doctor's appointments and things like that. So for special things we would put the kids to bed early, to order takeout. I would keep the little ones up from their nap all day, so they were really tired, and go to bed really early. And so we could just have time together. And I do think, even though I love that, that was really important to him, because you know what, as a mom, sometimes it's a lot of work to have a date night, or I would get nervous when we did leave them. I would be the one to be like, "Oh, are you sure we should leave? This seems really hard." Because you've got to prepare. Right on cue.
There it is. That's it. It's a beautiful sound, though.
But but I knew that was really, really important to him, that we had that time. And so we really did make it a priority to spend alone time together when he was home.
And our kids knew this. The most important relationship on earth is this relationship. And our kids knew, we verbalized that over and over, and then demonstrated that this is more important than you guys. That sounds, what do you mean? They were never neglected. They were always taken care of, but this is number one. And so we had to intentionally, what I'm saying, the challenge is intentionally orchestrate this to happen. It will not happen by accident. So we would have to set the clock as, okay, next Friday we're going to do the at-home date. we would, a lot of times you would go get special things. Like if the kids liked pizza rolls, we would get their special dinner. We'd feed them. We'd let them watch movies. You can stick them in front of movies and Veggie Tales for a couple, 3 hours. It's not going to kill them, okay, right? And we basically would put them in the basement, and I'd go to Pasta House a lot of times, and I'd get takeout and bring that in. You know, they're having pizza rolls. We're doing Pasta House. And unless there was blood, okay, do not bother us. Like, leave us alone. I mean, but we were really, honest with the kids about how how we needed to spend time, together with one another.
I thought of one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just going back to Christ and what I thought it's supposed to look like. I do think as women, we do get a picture of what our husbands are supposed to be. They are our rock. They are the ones that are supposed to lead our children, and they are supposed to be like the spiritual leader in our home. And sometimes that was hard for me. Again, we were on different levels a lot, I thought, at the beginning, but I wanted him to win with our kids. And so there were a lot of times when I felt like I wanted him to do more spiritually wise with the kids, or we would try to have family devotions.
Yeah. The kids are all laughing. Yeah, those did not go well.
Like a reality TV show, but or I would think we were supposed to be doing this more often or praying together more. But again, just kind of stepping back and knowing that God is the one in charge of our family and our marriage, and letting Mike be the winner instead of taking over. It was hard for me not to take over sometimes in that, because I knew best, especially when we would have family worship and he would like make photocopies with questions. And like he would start like reading passages from the Bible, and I'd be like, this is not going to work. But it's okay. I'm going to let him realize that's not going to work. And he did. I mean, but again, just really building him up to let him be that
Yeah.
was important, I think.
She's been my number one cheerleader, my biggest encourager. And so that's the takeaway. Be the encourager.
Sometimes not on the inside, is what I'm trying to say. And that, but that's when that humility and swallowing your pride is when you read that verse. I thought, because I'm a selfish person and I want things to look and be a certain way. And marriage and raising children is very refining. And we just need to let God do that work in us.
That's right. That's right. And so maybe finally I'd say this. Men, pursue your wives. Okay? I mean, for a while I would joke and I'd say, on our wedding day, I told her that I loved her, and if anything changes, I'd let her know. I mean, that's not really a way of loving your wife well, okay, and expecting respect, okay? But I still have to work at this. It's not just natural, and so.
I think especially at the beginning, especially if you have little children, Morgan and I have talked a lot about this a lot, just about marriage, and I'll be like, yep, I remember those days. And she's like, oh, you do? And I was like, yes. But he's gotten better. I mean, you get better. Hopefully you get
Notice
better.
she said that. She's gotten better.
No, you haven't.
No, it's fair. That's good. It's fair. So let me say this, too. Nothing we've described isn't probably happening inside of your home, or you've struggled with pieces of it over the journey. And if you're living in any of this right now and struggling, lay down your pride and get some help. Okay? Invite somebody in this church to come alongside. Maybe you need, start with that. Just hey, help us figure this out. It sounds like, maybe something that you've gone through looks similar to what we might be going through. There's a lot of wisdom, right, in this room. But if it's beyond that, then seek more professional help if that's what's needed, because what's at stake is the picture of what God established in the garden, and it's to give others the right opinion of who God is by the way your marriage is lived out. Falling in love is easy. Staying in love is hard. It requires a lot of humility, and it requires intentionality. So I hope that was encouraging to you today. I hope that you've experienced God's love in a unique way this morning. Now go and extend it. We'll see you next week. Thanks.